Hazing the apprentices was the best way to teach them discipline. Every time I do a line, I do it with intention. I kind of call my style illustrative line work. Tattooing always was in the back of my head as being, you know, the career. I got the genetic lottery, basically. I always joke with my parents, I'm like, which one of you gave me all these bad genes?
She's like a no-nonsense person. She is resilient.
Usually the first tattoo of the day is kind of like me warming up. So what I'll do is I'll warm up my client with a few small lines and then also my hands. You know, I deal with like some arthritic issues and other hand issues, so for me it's really good to kind of get some preliminary lines down, get my hands like not shaky, and make sure I'm, you know, feeling good before I continue. There was like a girl and her friend that came in and they were like, I want a smiley, but I kind of want my friend to draw it. And I was like, why don't you just draw it directly on them? And they were like, wait, we can do that? I was like, here's a Sharpie, like put on some gloves, like draw it on them.
I love that.
So I had them draw it on each other and then I tattooed it.
Wow, that's awesome.
A lot of people will say like, hey, I have this memory, this really fond memory of something. Like my last client had a window in his attic that reminded him of home, like the home he grew up in. So he had a photo of that window, so we worked from that photo. So I work from your photos, your references, the idea you have in mind, and we create a piece of art that's custom for you. You come in, I show you the work, the design. If you like it, then what we do is we place a stencil on the skin. So what the stencil does is it's a guideline for me to follow for the tattoo. Once the stencil is on, we can get tattooing. You know, I just get started, and once we're done, hopefully it turns out well. A lot of people have really unique stories behind the artwork they're getting. Some people just get stuff because they think it looks good, and I love doing that as well. Sometimes people have, you know, traumatic experiences that they're working through, or they lose a loved one and they're getting a memorial tattoo. So I try to really respect their boundaries, and you know, if they feel like they want to talk, I'll know, and usually then, you know, we'll start a conversation and kind of talk through it, and once we're done, they'll be like, oh, we're done? And it's funny because like the time goes faster when you're having a conversation with someone versus just sitting in silence.
Wow. Oh my God.
That's always the hope. People like see it in the mirror and are like, oh my gosh, you know, they're stoked.
This is like perfect. You killed it. That's incredible. Thank you. Oh my God.
Yay, it's so cool.
Laura, thank you so much.
Yeah. So let's let it kind of air out for a little bit.
Totally.
I might bleed a tiny bit, and then we'll wrap you up.
It's like from a picture of the house that I grew up in. It's like a window in the attic that I would like stare out of for many years. Yeah. So I took a picture and then she drew it out.
Obviously, when you start doing a tattoo, every line is permanent, and you have to really think of it that way and really respect the client in that way. You know, every time I do a line, I do it with intention, and I also have to do it with confidence, because if I'm not confident, it shows. One thing that I noticed that's different about working on an iPad or working on paper is I make different choices than I do make on skin. So for skin, I usually try to make things higher contrast. I know the longevity of it depends on how well I apply it that day, as well as, you know, the techniques and, you know, the shading I use, that kind of thing. Pretty much every time I tell my client, like, it's gonna look better on your skin, it's gonna look different. The stencils are usually very simple, and then once we get started, we add up more shading. Sometimes I make executive creative decisions and I add more lines, or I, you know, put white ink in certain spots to highlight things. But I always make sure my client knows what I'm doing so that they're aware of those changes. I kind of call my style illustrative line work. I tend to like doing a lot of lines. I love doing dot work as well. Just as a kid, I always did a lot of line drawings, and the way I learned art and what I enjoyed drawing just ended up being that style. I found that like if I tried to replicate other people's styles, I just wasn't creatively fulfilled. I didn't feel right about them. I've kind of dabbled in realism, I've dabbled in other styles, and I just keep reverting back to making stuff that makes me happy. And I think I get a lot of influences from like children's books, from vintage illustrations, a lot of like vintage 1800s woodcuts.
How cool is that? These are woodcuts. A lot of them are woodcuts. People stamp this stuff. That's crazy. All those lines and the roses. Obviously, a lot of this doesn't translate perfectly to tattoos because there's a lot of lines and some of them are very dark. I can simplify some of these ideas and create really vintage-inspired, unique pieces. So I really enjoy working from this book.
Really love like vintage line work stuff. I think that it's super interesting. Also, it's really funny sometimes looking at old drawings because the way they shade things and the way they make things is different from nowadays. It's not to sell you something. I don't know how to explain it. They just drew things how they thought they were sometimes, and it wasn't always realistic. So I kind of love playing with that idea and playing with book influences for sure. The first tattoo I ever did, my hands were like this. I ended up hitting a really low point where I was running out of work options as in like independent contractor essentially as a freelancer. I knew I needed an option. Tattooing always was in the back of my head as being the career that I really saw myself succeeding in. I just didn't know how to get into it. I ended up reaching out to a bunch of shops, basically asking about doing an apprenticeship. I spent about a year and a half, almost 2 years there. Unfortunately, it wasn't the apprenticeship experience that it wasn't a positive experience. Very abusive and very hierarchical and traditional, where basically they thought that hazing the apprentices was the best way to teach them discipline. Definitely was taken advantage of in a lot of ways. I ended up teaching mostly myself, and my mentor wasn't really there to teach me tattooing, so I learned by watching and I learned by doing. My first ever time picking up a tattoo machine and tattooing was actually on human skin, on my current roommate and partner. I just ended up applying all the art skills I had. I went to college for art, did art my whole life, and I just applied it and I looked at tattooing as a new medium. A lot of the older apprenticeships, and they remind me a lot of like fraternities. The way I was treated there and the way they treated the shop itself was more like a frat house. They would drink there, they would party there, they would leave all their beer cans out for me to clean up every morning. So I would get in before everyone got there because it was embarrassing to have clients come into the shop after they had partied there the night before. Unfortunately, I do think, the older way of doing things, like the way that they said had to be the way that we move forward in tattooing, like respecting tradition and shop loyalty and that kind of thing that was instilled in me. I think it's outdated, and mistreating apprentices is just not okay in any way. That's Scylla, yeah, she's one of our apprentices. A modern apprenticeship is more like an internship. You're getting mentored, they're teaching you their everything, and in return, for your free labor, you get a really good education. Basically, as an apprentice, your goal is to become a tattoo artist. Each apprenticeship varies in length. I would say at least a year you're going to be an apprentice, so you're going to be cleaning for a while. The apprentices here, like, it's so cool watching. I always, they get art classes every Tuesday from the shop owner himself, and he's an insane artist. He really is hands-on with them. They're expected to do a lot of drawing, a lot of assignments. Sometimes I even sit in on their classes because I'm still learning. Every day I'm still learning.
Just under 10 years ago, I started getting into a lot more florals and those kinds of flavors with my bartending. When I learned about Lauren's artwork, I wanted to get some kind of flowers on my own, skin. At first, I asked her to design me some flowers so I could take it to somebody else when she didn't tattoo before. And then I said, I'm gonna wait till you pass your apprenticeship, and then a year later, we go in, I get some roses, a rose, a chrysanthemum, a carnation, and a peony, and then some lavender sprinkled around, because her art for florals and plants and of the sort is just pretty dang awesome. This was the first one I got from Lauren while she was doing her apprenticeship, and this was a tribute to my cousin Valerie, who is leopard as a pineapple. This is her logo for her chef work, and I surprised her one day and I got it, and she was totally unexpecting of me getting this permanently on my body to show my support. And then this other one that I got from Lauren was just a fun, whimsical one for a September 13th, Friday the 13th type tattoo.
I first heard about Lauren on Instagram. I follow a lot of tattoo artists, and she popped up on my page as someone I might like. The toucan represents a really great time in my life. It's for my youth group. I was a state officer for about a year, and my title was Grand Bethel Second Messenger, so I collected toucans. Lauren designed it. My idea was kind of reminiscent of the old Autobahn drawings that they used to have of like birds and animals and stuff, and this is what she came up with. I'm in love with it.
I met Lauren through my cousin Julian. I reached out to her, I gave her my vision, and now we have come to leopard is a pineapple. Leopard means fierce, pineapple is a symbol of hospitality. It feels good to support Lauren because both of us have had autoimmune disorders early on. I myself have had them early on in my life. Sometimes you feel like you're alone and you feel like you're almost helpless because nobody else around you has these issues, and so I shared with her some words of encouragement because sometimes you kind of need it.
This so reminds me of like a Tron thing. Why?
Like the movie Tron?
Yeah. I never saw Tron, but I went to Disneyland when Tron was a thing, and like there was all these like lights and weird things. Like they had a Tron night party where they would have DJs. Do you remember that? And like all these kids were like pretending to rave, and I was like, this seems a little weird.
I was like 17, I think, when that was around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why does that sound?
And like all the kids are like jamming to like EDM. I'm like, they're starting them too young.
I was one of those kids. Dude.
They're
I
starting
remember
them
that.
too young. I'm going to Disney twice this month or next month.
Wow.
Pictures of kids.
Yeah. I have it in the calendar.
I only saw one.
Why are you going twice?
Wait, so this girl who has the same disease as me was in a coma because basically our immune systems attack our bones.
Wow.
But her immune system started attacking her lungs. So she got put in a medically induced coma for like 2 weeks.
Jeez.
And they didn't know if she was going to make it out.
Oh my God.
And she and I had been talking before. I'm texting her right now. But obviously she survived.
Yes.
And when she survived, her parents and I were in contact, and they were like, we want to do anything for her. She's always wanted a tattoo. She just turned 18.
Wow.
And I was like, I got her. Like, don't worry about it. And they're like, we're going to fly her out to visit you because I have a spare room, or like 2 spare rooms.
Yeah.
And I was like, just, have her stay with me. So she's staying with me, and she's like obsessed with Disney. So I'm gonna like give her tattoos. She's really excited. She thinks we're going to go to LA and like hang out. And she's like, she texted me the other day. She's like, Marvel like campus just opened at California Adventure. I would cry if I ever went. And I was like, oh yeah, we should go next time you visit. And I secretly have tickets for us to
Oh
go.
my God.
She's gonna lose her mind.
God.
genetic lottery. Basically, I have a rare disease, the main disease that has been, rough for me since I was 12. It's called chronic recurrent multifocal osteomyelitis, which is a mouthful. But we call it CRMO for short. Essentially, my innate immune system that I was born with has decided to send a signal to my bone proteins and cells in there to keep destroying bone instead of like rebuilding. So basically they just keep eating away at the bone when they're supposed to stop. So as a result, I have bones that look moth-eaten on X-rays or MRI. So little bits of bone mass are gone. And while that's happening, it's obviously very painful. So as a kid, I started having all these pains. It took about a year for them to figure out the diagnosis, but they had to do a bone biopsy to rule out cancer, because what happened in the scans is I lit up all over and it looked like bone cancer from a doctor's perspective, but luckily it was just chromo. I say it's just chromo, but people who deal with this illness definitely deal with it on the daily. Like it's rare to go into medical remission, but once in a while, if you're on the right medications, sometimes it can ebb and flow, and what we call flare-ups happen off and on. And then I'm in the midst of being diagnosed with several other things. So colitis is one of them that they just diagnosed, as well as, what's the other one? Oh, POTS, which I cannot pronounce the whole thing, but basically, it's like an orthostatic syndrome, where if I'm sitting for a while or laying down for a while and I stand up, or if I exercise, walking around, I get really dizzy, I start blacking out very easily. So when you stand up really quick and the world is like blacking out a little, that happens to me like daily, so pretty much all the time. So I can't stand for long when I'm tattooing, or else I start, falling over. So yeah, so I have quite a few autoinflammatory, autoimmune issues, and they're currently working on some more diagnoses, so we'll see what happens. I think most people that are chronically ill will tell you, they'll put on a front for sure, and when I'm here, I'm doing customer service and stuff, I'm smiling, I'm energetic, and I get home and I'm I need the heating pad. There's something called the spoon theory. People with chronic illnesses or illnesses in general have a certain amount of spoons per day. So it's like our energy level. And every activity we do costs us a spoon or two or three. And at the end of the day, when we're out of spoons, we can't just borrow someone else's spoons. We can't, get spoons from something else. We can't drink a coffee and get more spoons. Most people, coffee, Red Bull, they got more spoons, they're good to go. Us, we have to lay down, we have to rest, we have to nap. I'm a nap queen, absolutely. On my days off, I almost always take a nap. I would say I'm optimistic 20 to 50% of the time. But if I wasn't, I don't know what I would do, It's kind of like a survival mechanism in a way. His first ever tattoo. Took him 3 days, but tattooing a tattoo artist is always a good idea. They sit well, and they give you advice.
They're more forgiving.
Yeah, absolutely. After 2 days, though, I was like, you better finish this thing. Let's go. I'm not spending 4 days in this chair.
And then when it comes to Lauren, I don't know anyone she's a no-nonsense person.
Art fulfills me in a way. I always knew as a kid that I wanted to make a career out of art.
The one thing I admire about Lauren is the fact that she is still able to do something she loves, and she does it really well despite of everything that she's going through.
I also have a lot of joy in bringing joy to people, making them really stoked on themselves, on their bodies, on the artwork I give to them. This is one of the most fulfilling ways to work. I'm so fortunate to be able to make art on people and make a living doing it.
She has the biggest heart that I know, and she is resilient with everything that she has dealt with.
I can't imagine it's easy at all for her, and I really admire her for it.
As a chronically ill, like partially disabled person, the most you can hope for like your future and for a long-term job is stability and comfort.
She's a tough cookie. She like goes above and beyond, especially to deliver on the artwork that she shares with us.
I have like a happy, fulfilling workplace.
I don't know anyone as strong as Lauren.
So I think that's one of the things. Like, I am absolutely fulfilled by this job. So yeah, it's awesome. I'm so lucky. I would say, like, take no shit. Take no shit. Hi, my name is Lauren Potts. I'm a tattoo artist based in Long Beach, California.